So my name is Andrew Tinker. I'm the music director here at CSLDallas, the Center for Spiritual Living. Oh, thank you. And I'd like to share a song with you from my first album. It's called You Are My Angel. So when Petra takes your fake ID away, you'll remember who you really are. I felt a shift in times today, and solid ground became the ocean floor. And when I think about the world before the great flood, it was just mud anyway, to clean the body, mind, and soul. It takes a rhythm section with a groove, and soon the gloomy outlook will improve. It's a love that loves you anyway, 'cause you are my angel. Must be heaven sent. You are God's messenger, bringing good intent. Yes, you are. You are my angel. You are my vision of beautiful days to come in light and love. Oh yeah. It's up to you to know the plan, so I can see your spontaneity. Every day living in worry-free moments. You know it's got to be, and we will write the full account. Yes, we will, of how the world was when the water came. And when we heard the people's voice proclaim the love that loves you anyway. You are my angel. You must be heaven sent. Yeah. You are God's messenger, bringing good intent. Yes, you are. Yeah, you are my angel. You are my vision of beautiful days to come in light and love. And when I think of you, I've got to smile, just thinking that you could be thinking of me. I guess it's just the wisdom in the words you say that make it all okay. I think we're gonna be okay, yeah. When I think of you, I've got to smile, just thinking that you could be thinking of me. I guess it's just the wisdom in the words you say that make it all okay. I think we're gonna be okay, yeah, yeah. You are my angel. You must be heaven sent, yeah. You are God's messenger, bringing good intent. Yeah, you are my angel. You are my vision of beautiful days to come in light and love. You're my beautiful angel. Angel, you are my beautiful angel. You are my angel. Yes, you are. And don't you forget it.
Jonathan and Matt, that was an awesome groove section too there. You are my angel, God's messenger, heaven sent. Yeah. You know, I did not grow up with that message. Yeah. I grew up with the message that if I was pretty enough or desirable enough, I might be somebody's special angel, right? But not just that You're a gift just by being you. And so how often we spend our time in our days as we are growing up and moving into our adulthood, trying to figure out how to manage that, the difference between what we know to be true about ourselves and how we show up in the world, what's expected of us, what we should be, how we should behave, or who we think people want us to be. So today we're going to take a look at that as we close out our month on Will the Real You Stand Up? And one of the ways in which we allow our real you to stand up is I'm going to confiscate your fake IDs. Now, I will admit to you, when I was 16 in Pennsylvania, I created my own fake ID. Good enough, the statute of limitations is long gone. But you know, back then they were paper. The driver's license, they were paper. And so we'd go to the Office Depot store, the office store, and we'd get those little press-on letters and numbers, and we'd just like change our birth dates. Oh my goodness! Don't ever anybody underage try that at home. And you don't have to admit if you did it yourself. It's okay. We won't ask for a show of hands. But I was 16. I was 16 going on 25, right? And that was how I wanted to be seen. That's how I wanted to present myself to the world. Somehow being 16 wasn't okay for whatever reason. And I wanted people to see me the way I wanted them to see me, not necessarily for who I was. And so I created this way of being able to move in the world. And the truth is, of course, the reality of it is that it was false. So, although I must admit, I have to tell you this story. A few years ago, I was coming home from Los Angeles from a big meeting. I was in an airport. I can't remember now where, Phoenix or I don't know where, flying through. And they had a little wine bar. And I sat at the little wine bar, and I thought, oh, I had a really long layover. And it was really nice. It had this great little wine bar. And this was just a few years ago. And the woman marched up to me. The waitress, she marched up to me, and she looked at me. And I said, I'd like to have a glass of Pinot Noir. And she said, could I see your ID, please? I said, are you kidding me? She said, no, ma'am, I'd like to see your ID. I said, oh, I could kiss you. You had just made my day. I showed her my ID. She got 3 shades of red. I'm so sorry, ma'am. I said, oh, no, don't apologize. You have no idea when I was young how hard I worked to be able to be here. So it was cute. It was great. But we have to think about how many of these false IDs we are carrying around, the way in which we want to present ourselves to the world, the way in which we want to be seen. The problem is that that's not who we really are. Yeah, and you know the other really interesting thing about all that was because I was 16 going on 25, and I wanted to be that. I didn't make it through my first stint in university. I went to work after a year at university in Seattle. I got a real estate license, and because I was blonde and cute, I got a guy to be willing to actually give me a salary as a real estate agent, which those of you in the room who know that, it's pretty unheard of. And so it was just enough to pay my rent and buy me apples and popcorn, but I did survive on it. And that was great. And I felt like, okay, I'm getting on with my life, and found the Science of Mind, began to go to the center, and the only problem was the guys that I did business with in commercial real estate, they all wanted to sign their papers over drinks. Some of them actually refused to meet with me unless it was over a drink. And so one day my boss said to me, he said, you know that guy you've been trying to work with and get a deal going? Why don't you wear that low-cut, sexy blouse that you wore the other day to work? He'll sign the papers. I'm guessing there's not a man in the room who's ever had somebody say something like that. But it was about how I looked, right? It was about the persona, not about whether I knew what I was talking about or whether it was even a good deal. I didn't stay in that office too much longer because I was being asked to pull my persona to the front. And I was already doing enough of that. So when we think about this identity that we wear, I was thinking about these as masks. We can wear masks about who we think we should be, how we think we should show up, what we think is acceptable or appropriate. And it's fascinating to me that I did some interesting, I always like to play and look for images, and I was thinking about these masks, our masks. What are they hiding? What are we hiding behind that mask? And I did a lot of exploring. And I noticed that there were fundamentally two images that I kept finding over and over and over again. The first one is the mask of happiness that we slap on our sadness. Right? And some of us do that. We know that that's true sometimes. We don't share what's really going on with us. And the other is the mask of normalcy that we slap on that which we think is grotesque about ourselves or unacceptable. I noticed that these were the only two images I could find over and over and over and over again. And yet, I don't believe that this is fundamentally the problem with the masks. Although we do those things, even more importantly, the mask we wear is the mask that hides our light, that hides the truth of who we are. And I couldn't find a single image of that. What a statement that makes about our culture and about ourselves. What do we think will happen if we show people the real us? We think there's something horrible and hideous behind that, don't we? That's our deepest fear, is that we'll show ourselves and we'll be unacceptable, unlovable. And yet, the truth is that what's really behind there and who we really are is the light and the love and the power and the presence of the divine reality as us. That's who we really are. So the first big lie actually isn't so much about the mask. The first big lie is what we think lies behind it and why we wear it. So as we release our fake IDs, we could begin to release our masks. This thing that we wear that causes us to fit in or be acceptable or behave in a way that we think we're supposed to. So this is similar to something that I actually have in my kitchen. I have this saying, pretending to be a normal person day after day, it is exhausting. Yeah, hello. You could also read normal as perfect. Isn't that slightly the equation that we drew last week? Right? I seek to be unflawed, perfect somehow, so that you'll love me, like me, find me desirable, accept me, hire me, want to marry me, whatever, blah, 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 you fill in the blank. And yet, is there anybody in this room who's normal? Boring, that's exactly right. And if you look at a bell curve, right, what a bell curve does is it traces normalcy, and you have 10% on either side, and then you have this big bell curve. Do you know that there's only one person at the top? In the normal spot? Everything else is a derivation of that on the bell curve. And yet, we spend so much time trying to be normal, expecting ourselves to be normal. Quite frankly, I think it kills our soul. It is that one of the most soul-killing things we can do is to try to be like everybody else. We've heard it said in lots of different places, I compare my inside to your outside. Somehow you look like you have it all together. Therefore, there must be something wrong with me because I don't have it all together. Right? We know better from all of our classes. None of us have it all together. We are all just ordinary people having our own life experiences, and each and every one of us is precious and unique and different. Hallelujah. And to try to be normal, to fit in, to find the box that's okay, it is exhausting. So, when I was a little girl, I used to go out of my house because my house was a little volatile and the energetic was very intense. And so I would go out, when I was 4 or 5, I would get a blanket and I would go out and lay in the grass. And I would watch the clouds or read a book. But my favorite thing to do on a day like today when it was really sunny is I would look for the fairy roads in the grass. And I would find the fairy houses. You know, that didn't go over so well in my family. My father, he was a German scientist. Need I say more? If I was going to talk about anything, needed to marshal my argument, have it well in hand, well organized and documented, and I should be able to speak it clearly and strongly so that I could stay up 15 minutes after my bedtime. I learned how to do that. And this sort of I call her my magical child. Yeah, she was not acceptable in my household. She didn't fit in any way, shape, or form. And I learned how to be normal, at least what normal looked like in my family. And I learned how to be strong and powerful and speak my word with intention and clear and all of those things which, quite frankly, serve me well. Except I lost touch with my magical child. And I spent a lot of years feeling as though part of my soul had died, and I didn't know why. A few years ago, I went on my sabbatical, as many of you know, and I went for 3 months to Europe. And at the beginning of that, I had a conference, and one of my prayer partners was at that conference as well. And we'd been praying together for the preparation of the sabbatical and dealing with all my fears around it and getting it all worked out. And he kept saying, "Okay, but I want to pray for the sabbatical." No, we're not ready. We're still praying about the workup time. So the day the conference was over and everybody was going home and I was going on for the rest of my trip, I said, "Okay, now you can pray that prayer you've been wanting to pray for weeks. And the prayer that I want you to pray for me is that on this sabbatical, I reacquaint myself with my magical child." It might be one of the most beautiful prayers that has ever been prayed over my life and for me. And I spent the rest of that trip having magic every day. I found a feather every day. Didn't matter where I was. Every day I found a feather. And I knew that feather was a reminder to me to be open to the magic, to be aware of what was going on. And that was a reacquainting of myself with my own magical child. Now, one of the reasons that we have these masks and we wear these fake IDs is because as we're growing up, that child that we were, however we recognize or relate to that free-spirited being, that essential true self that we see in every child when we come across them, we realize that not only do we have to pretend sometimes to be other than we are, we actually sometimes are forced to protect ourselves. I certainly found myself in my own experience, in my own home, feeling the need to protect myself and find a different way to show up. In our book that we've been reading, Daring Greatly, and I sure hope you're reading it. Oh my God, it's an awesome, awesome read. Brené Brown talks about this. When we get to this point of beginning to uncover our true selves, she asks, what armor are you wearing? What armor are you wearing to protect yourself? So we have fake IDs, which are a lie. We have our masks that we wear, which are a lie. And then this third lie we want to uncover is the armor that we're wearing to protect ourselves. She labels them, one of them is victim or Viking. Personally, I fall in the Viking category. Get the sword out, do battle, right? What, are you kidding me? And some of us run away, or we just play the victim. We can't do it. We just can't do it anymore. Then there's the oversharer. Now, this is an interesting armor. The oversharer is sharing so much, so fully, so completely, so that you just can't listen anymore and you go away. So there's really no connection, is there? There's really no opportunity to even get a word in edgewise. So even though it looks like there's sharing going on, the oversharer is just protecting themselves by pushing us away. Then there's the now you see me, now you don't strategy of armor. I'll tell you a little bit. Oh, no, that's really not true. Oh, let me show you a little bit. Oh, no, that really didn't happen. Oh, let me show you let me share just a time. Oh, no, you heard me wrong. That's the now you see me, now you don't armor. And finally, my favorite is, well, I'm just too cool. I'm too cool to have any excitement or feelings about this. This is the skeptic, the cynic, the one who just can't really show their gleefulness, their joy, their interest, because, it's been shut down so many times in the past. We're just going to pretend to be cool. Brené Brown was in a life class with Oprah Winfrey, and you can see a lot of snippets of her on YouTube. It was really great, and there's this one where she talks about this particular armor, the I'm cool armor. And she talks about how when she got invited to be on the show with Oprah to do this life class, she came with permission slips in her pockets. You have permission. I give myself permission to be wildly excited to meet Oprah. I give myself permission to ask for her autograph. I give myself permission to feel a little nervous and intimidated. Basically, she said I gave myself permission to be uncool. I love that. To just, what is that? Be real. That's the theme for our whole month, to keep it real, to be real about what's going on with ourselves. Now, some of us needed this armor when we were children, but we're not children anymore. And yet, we're still wearing our armor. We had an interesting experience many years ago. We were having some interesting conversations, challenges in our board of trustees. This was many, many years ago. And we brought in an outside facilitator to help us work through some stuff. And at one point, she felt we needed to do what's called a voice dialogue process because she said there were too many children at the table. And she wanted the adults to come forward. Okay, I wonder what that means. And so she did this little process for us, which was really great. She said, well, we're going to just imagine our child, our 4 or 5-year-old, our 2 or 3-year-old, whatever comes up for us, that child, and we're going to put that child in a really safe place in our imagination where it can play and be protected and do what children do, which is not sit at a board table. They actually don't know how to do that. So we're going to let the child do what the child does so that your adult can actually come to the boardroom. So we went through this whole process, and she had us imagine it and, make a nice, lovely space. And then she said the very last thing we'll do is we'll see who's the guardian of our child so that the child feels very safe. So just see who appears to have a guardian, for the guardian for this lovely place that you've created. Well, it was fascinating. Some people didn't have a guardian at all. And those of us who don't have a guardian at all, we're actually leading with our child. We're sending our child in to manage adult affairs. Some of us had a guardian. Me, I had 3. Oh my God. No wonder my magical child was so buried. I had 3 guardians. One, a giant knight in, full armor. One, an Indian brave. And one, an Amazonian woman with her big sword. They were a little scary. I said, why do I have 3? And she said, well, that's your protection mechanism. That's your armor. I spent 3 years dissolving 2 of those 3. I spent 3 years working on releasing 2 of them. I kept the Indian brave. He seemed the most appropriate middle ground. He was a little softer. He only had a quiver of a bow and arrow. He wasn't the knight and the Amazonian woman. They seemed a little over the top. I didn't think I needed quite that much protection because I now knew that, actually, I knew the truth of who I was. I knew that spirit is all the protection I'll ever need, that spirit is the truth of my being. It was just my child needed a little safety. Do you see how we protect ourselves because we have learned in the past as children that we needed it, but we're not children anymore. E. Cummings says this: it takes courage to show up and to grow up and become who you really are. It takes courage to grow up and become who you really are, which actually means we have to let go of some of these things, which is why I'm confiscating your fake ID. I'm inviting you to put your mask down, and I'm acknowledging that all of us need to continue to release the armor that we use to protect ourselves. These are all the lies that we live with that keep us from experiencing who we are. And it takes courage to do this work. That's why we've been reading Daring Greatly. It takes profound courage to simply show up as ourselves, warts and all, just exactly the way that we are. Ralph Waldo Emerson says this: God will not have his work made manifest by cowards. Yeah, I love that. And I think of all the places in my life where I'm not courageous enough to just be what needs to be, say what needs to say, be who I am. Just having the courage to show up unmasked, unprotected. Now, as we begin to discover more of who we are, and we do actually grow up, we do actually begin walking a spiritual path, right? Our light starts to shine. We start to understand who we are, that this is the very reality of our being that is pushing us, wanting us to grow, to become all that we've come here to be. And then we compare our light to others, don't we? Ralph Waldo Emerson goes on to say this: there is a time in everyone's education when he arrives at the conviction that envy is ignorance, that imitation is suicide, that we must take ourselves, for better, for worse, as our portion, that though the wide universe is full of good, no kernel of nourishing corn can come to us but through our own toil, bestowed on that plot of ground which is given to us to fill. The power which resides in us is new in nature, and none but we know what that is, what it is that we can do. Nor do we know until we've tried. When I first read Ralph Waldo Emerson's Self-Reliance, I was 18 and a half years old, and it blew my life wide open. Blew my life open, blew my heart open, blew my whole being open to a different spiritual point of view. To stop trying to be what I thought I was supposed to be, stop trying to pretend that I actually knew what I was doing, and begin to really allow my own light to shine. And yet how many of us, oh, I love this image, how many of us, we close that light down, or we know it's there, we cover it up because we compare it to other people's light. Well, gosh, she's really good at that. Well, he's really great at that. Well, right, all of that thing that we do. So I want to stop for a minute, and I want to talk about, I want to invite you to the Roots class. I know it sounds kind of odd because it's a history class and, you know, the roots of science of mind, but let me tell you, this is the class that opened the door for me. We read Ralph Waldo Emerson. We read some of his amazing essays. And let me tell you that, as I said, it blew me wide open. Then we read Thomas Troward, who will blow your mind open. And then we read Emma Curtis Hopkins, which blows our whole sense of separation and opens the door to a deep and powerful mysticism. Now, these are people that Ernest Holmes read himself that really impacted the philosophy that we teach and the spiritual practice that we walk. Why we do this is so that we can have our own relationship with these writings, so that we don't have to go through somebody else. Ernest Holmes is no smarter than the rest of us. He's not a guru. He's not any of those things. He was somebody who did this work to help us move along, and now we can do it for ourselves. And to read this material and have that experience for ourselves, I cannot recommend it highly enough. And we're going to have a blast in this Roots class because I'm going to be teaching the first section on Emerson. Tracy Brown will be teaching the section on Thomas Troward, and then Bert Hedden will be teaching the section on Emma Curtis Hopkins, and then we'll tie it all together in the end. It'll be an extraordinary experience that you do not want to miss. So it actually starts this week. But in reflecting on this talk and finding myself so drawn to Emerson, I don't want you to miss it. I don't want you to miss out. Because he reminds us that the self that we rely on is not the little self. It's not the little self that is uncertain or doesn't know or is that little child. It is the self that we are, the light that we are here to make manifest. Ernest Holmes says this: there is something about you and me that is cosmic, universal, that stretches over time and space. Let us learn to think better of ourselves. You know, you don't have to be conceited to say, God made me and God cannot make mistakes. No matter what it looks like, God did not make a mistake when it made me. I think this is the biggest lie we must uncover and release. I think we have fake ID and we wear masks and we put on this armor because we have this niggling suspicion that there's something wrong with us, that we're flawed. And yet the truth is we are the love and the life and the light and the joy and the presence and power of that one infinite reality, learning to see itself, be itself, grow itself as us. Ralph Waldo Emerson goes on to say, the soul's emphasis is always right. That soul that you are, that knows who you are and who you came here to be. Sometimes I pretend to be normal, but it gets boring. So I go back to being myself. Stop pretending to be normal. So when I got into the ministry, we were taught all kinds of things about how to do ministry and how to care for people and be all engaged with people and be very loving and open and they call it pastoral with people, and it's a very Christian image. And then on top of that, many of us were women, and so the assumption is that women are that way. They're very warm and loving and pastoral and caring and all of those kinds of things. And so I spent the first 10 years of my ministry trying to be that. But that's not who I am. I'm an introvert. Unlike Reverend Karen, who goes out and wants to mingle with all of you during the meet and greet, I'm loving you from up here. not that I don't love you or I love you any less. But do you see, that is actually the picture that was held up for me. You should be that kind of minister. Ooh, man, did I try to push that square peg into that round hole for a really long time. I beat myself bloody. And I thought there was something wrong with me and that I was not going to be a good minister because that's not me. I love in other ways. And every time I tried to pretend that, or over that time of trying to pretend that, more soul killing happened. Until one day I stopped, this is silly. Actually it was a book I read, Play to Your Strengths. And I thought, what's my strength? Well, I'm a teacher. That's my strength. I'm a teacher. And I believe that if you will understand something new in a deeper way, that your whole life will be changed. And I love you enough to stick with you until you learn it, even if I have to put my foot in your back. And I know that sometimes that doesn't always feel loving. But you see, I had to make peace with how I do it and not compare it to how somebody else does it. Not pretend that I could be like somebody else. We have to find our own plot of ground, our own plot of life, and cultivate it. Ernest Holmes says this: we are individual points in the consciousness of the original creative spirit of the universe. We are points where it thinks through us as us. We, each one of us, are individual points in the consciousness of the original creative spirit of the universe. We are points where it thinks, I would say, lives through and as us. This is who we came here to be, not any of those other things. So I'm confiscating all of your fake ID so that we can come together in love and light and support each other in being all that we can be, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, and to see the truth about ourselves and each other. So in Brené Brown's book, at the very end, if you have gotten that far, if you haven't, I highly recommend it. One of the last chapters, she talks about wholehearted parenting, daring greatly to be a parent in a new way. And in that, she has the Wholehearted Parenting Manifesto. And when Karen and I were reading this book and preparing all of these talks and kind of getting ready for the month, we found that, and we were like, wow, that's really great, but we're not really doing a parenting thing, a parenting talk. If you are a parent, I highly recommend it. But there was something about it that was really impactful. And we really started to look at it, and we thought, well, this could be our community. This could be for our community. We could take this up as a community and how to be with each other. Wow. Our community manifesto, a wholehearted community manifesto.
Especially, it's wrapping up the entire month in how we can show up and stand up for each other and support and love one another in our community, because things come up in each of our lives, and it's a way to get more deeply connected to one another, and especially as we move into June and that topic and how we're going to live out the rest of this annual theme, by the way, that's called Keep It Real. And this is a way to keep it real with each and every one of us so that we are, be the God you want to see is what we sang this morning. Let's be the community that we want to see. And as this community is that, so is this country. As this country is that, so is this world. And this manifesto pretty well hits it and encompasses what we feel our community is.
So we're going to read this, and it's going to sound like we're reading it to you, that it's from us to you, and that would be true. But we'd also like for you to hear it and read it as from you to the other members of the community. So we're going to hear it with both of those ears, They are available in the back. We'd love for you to take one home. When you leave here today, we'd love for you to take one home so that you have it for us to all be in this place together. So this is the Wholehearted Community Manifesto.
Above all else, we want you to know that you are loved and lovable. You will learn this from our words and actions. The lessons on love are in how we treat each other and how we treat ourselves.
We want you to engage with the world from a place of worthiness. You will learn that you are worthy of love, belonging, and joy every time you see us practice self-compassion and embrace our own imperfections.
We will practice courage in our community by showing up, letting ourselves be seen, and honoring vulnerability. We will share our stories of struggle and strength. There will always be room in our hearts for both.
We will teach you compassion by practicing compassion with ourselves first and then with each other. We will set and respect boundaries. We will honor hard work, hope, and perseverance. Rest and play will be community values as well as community practices.
We will learn accountability and respect by watching us make mistakes and making amends, and by watching how we ask for what we need and talk about how we feel.
We want you to know joy, so together we will practice gratitude. We want you to feel joy, so together we will learn how to be vulnerable.
When uncertainty and scarcity visit, you will be able to draw from the spiritual truths that are a part of our everyday community life and practice.
Together we will cry and face fear and grief. We will want to take away your pain, but instead we will sit with you and teach you how to feel it.
We will laugh and sing and dance and create. We will always have permission to be ourselves with each other. No matter what, you will always belong here.
As you live your wholehearted journey, the greatest gift that we can give to you is to live and love with our whole heart and to dare greatly.
We will not teach or love or show you anything perfectly, but we will let you see us. And we will always hold sacred the gift of seeing you, truly, deeply seeing you.
And as we anchor this into our being as a collective manifesto, not just from us to you, but from all of us to each other, I'd like for you to share in reading this last piece with us together.
And if so far you agree with it, and know that you'll agree with this, and this is a manifesto that you're willing to take up, I invite you to stand. There's something in this standing, if you are able. And if not, that's okay too. But stand together as we read this.
And imagine that you're saying it to each and every person in this room. We will not teach or love or show you anything perfectly, but we will let you see us. And we will always hold sacred the gift of seeing you, truly, deeply seeing you. And so it is.
So it is.
Amen. Hallelujah. I hear the dream. Amen. Hallelujah. I see the gleam.